everyone, it's Cindy. Welcome back to Studioloo. I'm here today with a journal flip through of the Phlox Fairy Journal from my Fairy Journal collection. This journal is in a vintage hand-painted book that's been painted in an iridescent pink, pinky gold kind of paint. Hopefully you can see some of the color changing. There's also fairy dust that's been painted on there on front and on back. On back we have this decoupage. It says the time for all fairy people to come abroad. And you'll see the closure is through a gold eyelet here. On the front, you'll see the Phlox Fairy inside this cabinet card style topper for the journal. I've used bronze eyelets to attach it. And on the spine, you'll see these beautiful flowers, and it says bewitching creature at the bottom. We have an eyelet here that holds on to this beautiful spine dangle. I've used really lovely beads, a little fairy wing there, and lots of semi-precious stones and crystals and glass beads and findings and vintage jewelry, all sorts of beautiful things. I went into my stash of jewelry making supplies that I've been hoarding for like a decade. So yes, it was time to use those up. So the tie is a vintage seam binding, and we'll just open it on up here and jump right into the journal. So something that's common in the journal collection is how it opens up. You'll see that there is some lovely paper used on the inside here, and there's a little tabbed pocket. One of the common themes in the journal collection is I've used a vintage 1950s authentic photo, and I've added some fairy wings and created my own little fairy. This one is so divine. It's a sweet little girl and her dog, and I've added her little wings there. Inside the pocket, let me just move the dangle here. There are a couple of things. So a field guide page on the Orioles and a little fairy. You could use her as a journal card, or you could stick her down elsewhere, but she just peeks out there. On this side we have this collaged pocket with this lovely fairy, and it is on some beautiful scrapbook paper. And then this little vintage image. This is a public domain image. I forget the name of the photographer, but he did a whole series. It's like turn of the century, like photography with fairies. It's really sweet. Some nice yellow paper. I believe this is Vicky Boutin paper collection. And then this is some of my hand-dyed batik fabric down the side of an avocado dyed page, and a little beaded head pin there. You'll see, I forgot to show you the side profile of the journal. There's lots of flowers and lace and things that hang out, and we have beaded head pins that I've hand beaded with beads on bulb pins. This is a Shirley Barber fairy art page from one of her books. And up here we have a little envelope. So it has these leaves in the background, and it says a dictionary of fairy trees. And then you open it on up, and you will find this little journal card. This is from the Fairyopolis book. It's these lovely little journal entry about Cicely Mary Barker's adventures looking for fairies. And that just pops up here. And then some eco-printed fabric with a bulb pin on some pink lined stationery. This is a page from Teal and Tattered's fairy kit. Some pink marbled paper. The Greater Celandine fairy. The Song of the Bee Orchis fairy. Some of my hand-dyed paper. This is a pocket that sort of tips out, and it's from the Fairyopolis book, and it says, gentle fairies, hush your singing, can you hear my white bells ringing as for far from away, who can tell me what they say? And so when you flip it over, you see there's like a little tag here with a button, and it says leap, and there's a little fairy, a little frog. And then you pull this out, you see more fairies back here. And then this is a little journal card. It says, of being small. And it's a fairy coming out of a little frame. And over here we have this lovely sort of sprite. This is from I want to say not the Fantastic Beasts. I forget the name of the book, but it's just a beautiful, iconic, sprightly kind of fairy. And then this is some avocado dyed paper. This is some of my hand spun yarn stitched down the side of a flower petal page. Some stenciling and some of this fairy dust fabric. This is a pocket from Fairyopolis. It says, "Note how to fall out of favor with the fairies, intrude into their affairs." And this is some fairy paper. I've used this throughout the series. It's this really iridescent, sparkly paper, and it's handmade locally. Inside the pocket, we have this large book page. I wanted to include it because it's just wonderful. It says "The Fairy Folk," and it has this large poetry, and over here it says "Topsy-Turvy World." So it's just a couple of nice verses from children's books. And then we have a little collage over here. This is one of my skyline pages with a little frog here and some floral botanicals and a fairy. This is "The Flowers" by Robert Louis Stevenson. Fun tip out page. I love these fairies. "Joys of Life," another verse from the same book, Mary Russell Mitford. And some pink marbled paper. "The King Cup Fairy," "Lily of the Valley," a little tip out cabbage dyed paper. Little tuck spot made from a fairy book cover on some vintage wrapping paper. There's beautiful pansies that I love, and these are some of my butterfly tags with vellum wings. They're just collaged. And the center of the signature has this beautiful fairy over this fire. And then this is "The Secret of the Fairy Ring," a little booklet here that talks about the secret of the fairy ring. And then this little cute bookmark that I got in Happy Mail. And a cabbage dyed page with some lovely floral card there. The Lily of the Valley Fairy, mallow. Some pink lace on this marble paper with a head pin. "The Fountain" by James Russell Lowell. "The Fairy Life" by William Shakespeare. Love this fairy riding this bat. Another skyline page here, more fairies. This is some vintage book page on the back of this fairy paper, and then we have more of this fairy wing fabric. Some stenciling. Flower petal page, avocado dyed page, a belly band with the Shirley Barber fairies. "August brings the sheaves of corn, then the harvest home is born." We have more fairies in the background, and then this is a collage journal card that I made. It says, "Now if you happen to make friends with a fairy or two, sometimes they'll tap on your window in the middle of the night. They want you to see how beautifully the stars are twinkling." And this is a jelly printed page that I collaged. This is a coloring book page pocket. More fairies back here. And this is a journal card that says "Sweet Fairy's Heart." We have a little fairy and a little duck family here. Some of my hand dyed paper. Bee Orchis. The Song of the Tansy Fairy. More marbled paper. This is more teal and tattered fairy paper. Pink stationery. Shirley Barber fairies. They were carried away to their new home in a beautiful carriage drawn by a flight of dragonflies. This is some Cicely Mary Barker inspired fabric with this fun fabric in behind. So it's just a fabric flip on avocado dyed paper. Some yellow paper with some vintage pink tatting down the side, and just beautiful botanicals at the back. This is some handmade paper that's locally made, and it has these big pink like reeds in it, and then I stitched flowers all down the side. This is an Amity Bloom pocket with this tag inside with this little mouse hiding in there. Lots of botanicals and a little deer back there. This is a Barker fairy. Another Barker fairy, and then a little stamp here on avocado dyed paper. Some fairy art from a beautiful fairy art book. This is a pocket from the Cicely Mary Barker Fairyopolis book, and it talks about sort of like fairy rules, what to do on a hot day, and has a Lewis Carroll quote. This is a journal card. This is kind of foresty with this little bobcat here, and some botanicals on fairy paper. This is some washi tape and a little floral. It says the flora and fauna, and we've done some spraying here. More pink stationery, another of the Amity Bloom pockets on this super bright pink page. I had to use it in the pink journal, right? And then inside we have this whole bit of stationery, these beautiful fairies, and it has packaging paper on back, and that just tucks in there. And then we have this, again, Cicely Mary Barker inspired fabric flip and some vintage fabric underneath. So you can write your secrets under there, and a upper tuck pocket, and has a little verse here with this little fairy. Another one, another fairy, more botanicals from the forest, and this has some nice paper on back for writing. More of our little fairies, an avocado dyed paper, a squirrel pocket, and you can see more fairies back here, and then this journal card. This beautiful rainbow fairy petting a spider. And then on this side we have a side tuck pocket, Fairy Places in Sussex. And this is vintage gift wrap paper behind it, and another botanical tag. Some pink construction paper with vintage lace. This is a vintage book page from an Enid Blyton book, a shimmering carpet blue as amethyst. The bee in the fur coat. And we have a little fairy stamp here on avocado dyed paper. This is a painted page with a unicorn and some fairies. And then more painted space here for writing, more fairies. This is vellum with this fun crystally print. Red clover fairy, the song of the black medic fairy. Some of my hand-dyed yarn stitched, or my hand-spun yarn stitched down marble paper. Some stripy pink paper here with a little thistle pocket at the bottom, and this is just like a little booklet that flips out. It's made from coloring book page from a fairy coloring book. Stenciling, some vintage stationery, butterfly, more beautiful butterfly fairy art, and then a Wendy Froud fairy here in the center. More beautiful fairy art with butterflies, stenciling, vintage stationery, a little bee journal card here in this pocket. This is the Life Energy Tarot card from the Fairy Tarot, and a large journal card with fairies. White bindweed, the Song of the Self-Heal Fairy, more vellum. And then we have a little belly band with this really sparkly nice paper, and underneath we have some little forest creatures from a fairy book, and this little piece of stationery with a baby fawn. So cute. Have to have some forest creatures in here. It's not a fairy book without them. And this page actually folds out. Painted space for writing. Avocado paper with a little iridescent fairy paper tab. Another vintage book page from Enid Blyton, winner of the long jump, and it has a fairy back here, and a little flower on some pink construction paper. This is a collage kind of pocket that has these sort of hidden tuck spots that has little bits in, like these little frogs here, and this little frog over here. So this one's all frogs mostly, cute little frogs. And then this little botanical, it just tucks into all these little flowers. And then back here, we have the Lily of the Valley fairy. That's vintage gift wrap paper. And on this side, we have just some beautiful fairy art, avocado dyed paper, painted space on this in this fairy book with some nice blue ribbon and a beaded head pin. This is more vintage gift wrap paper. Thus your fairies made of the most beautiful things. This is again one of those super bright pink pages, and a large piece of stationery to tone it down with all these cute blue fairies. And that just clips over top here. Pink stationery. The beautiful Fairy Queen. More fairy paper, belief in the fairy realms, and more vintage gift wrap. This is a Fairyopolis pocket up here, how to find favor with the fairies. It tells you all about that. And then we have this journal card inside with a dragonfly and a fairy, more fairies, and a little verse, a little fairy verse. And this is some vintage Lily of the Valley gift wrap paper on avocado dyed paper. The Song of the Dogwood Fairy. The Song of the Black Bryony Fairy. More handmade paper, and we're at the end of the journal where we have this pocket and another page of field guide of all these beautiful birds. And that is the end of this journal. So if you're seeing this video, that means that this journal is either already in my Etsy shop or it will be there soon. You can find links to my Etsy shop and all of my social media down below in the description box. If you haven't yet subscribed, I would love it if you did. I make all sorts of different kinds of journals and tutorials and other bits and bobs on this channel, and it's nice to have a community here. So thank you so much for joining me for this little fairyland adventure, and I will talk to you again very soon. Bye for now.